I thought I was finally free of my ex, but then I uncovered a shocking secret that sent my life spiraling. Massive, undisclosed debt that legally tied me to his financial ruin. This isn't just about money. It's about the slow, suffocating realization that someone you once trusted could drag you down long after they've left your life. It started with a single envelope, cream-colored, slightly creased at the corners, stamped with that cold blue ink of the state courthouse. It was a Tuesday afternoon, quiet, unassuming, the kind of day you don't expect your whole life to tilt. I remember the smell of lemon cleaner lingering in the air. I'd just finished mopping, my playlist humming softly from the speaker on the counter. When the mail slot clattered, I almost ignored it. But then I saw it. The thick envelope with my full name typed neatly across. Inside, words that didn't make sense at first. Joint liability, unpaid loan balance, collection proceedings. At the bottom, the signature of a law firm I didn't recognize. For a few seconds, I just stood there, still holding the mop, staring at the page as if it might rearrange itself into something less terrifying. My heart began to beat so hard I could hear it in my ears. I whispered out loud, like saying it could make it less real. This must be a mistake. But deep down, I knew whose name would be behind it. Ethan. Normal life. Setup. Before all of that, before the letter, before the sleepless nights and the lawyers, I used to think I'd finally found peace. After Ethan and I separated 2 years ago, I worked hard to rebuild myself. I moved into a small townhouse near the edge of town, nothing fancy, but it was mine. The walls were painted a soft gray blue, and every morning I'd make coffee and watch the light spill across the floorboards. It felt like a life reclaimed, slow, steady, quiet. I taught English at the local community college, and my students were the kind that made the job worth it. Single parents, late bloomers, people who'd lived real lives before coming back to class. On Fridays, I'd treat myself to a slice of cherry pie from the diner across the street and spend the evening grading papers with an old jazz record spinning in the background. Friends used to tell me how lucky I was, how gracefully I'd moved on. But luck had nothing to do with it. It was work. Every piece of stability I had, I earned. Ethan and I had been together nearly 8 years. He was charming back then, that quiet, confident charm that makes you feel safe at first. He worked in real estate, always talking big about the next deal, the next big flip. But somewhere between those dreams, he started cutting corners, borrowing money, and making promises he couldn't keep. When things between us fell apart, I told myself it was a clean break. I didn't take alimony, didn't ask for a thing. All I wanted was distance. The last time I saw him, he was leaning against his car, sunglasses on, smiling that half smile he used when he didn't want me to see he was lying. He said, "You'll be better off without me, Nora." And I believed him. For 2 years, I thought the past was buried, until that envelope arrived. The first clue, suspicion. I called the number on the letter immediately. The woman on the line was polite, detached, the way people sound when they've said the same thing 100 times before. "Yes, Miss Daniels. According to our records, your name appears as a co-signer on the loan dated 4 years ago, balance due $148,000. My mouth dried. That can't be right. I never signed any loan. She paused, as if flipping through pages. The document lists both your signatures. And that's when the air shifted, because I remembered. Years ago, before the cracks showed, Ethan had asked me to sign a few forms for what he said was a property refinance. He said it was just to lower the interest rate. Just paperwork, babe. We were sitting at the kitchen table, his laptop open, him sliding pages toward me while he kissed the top of my head. I didn't read every page. I trusted him. Now my own signature was the chain around my neck. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the edge of my bed. The letter spread out beside me. The hum of the refrigerator sounded louder than usual, like the world itself was holding its breath. I called Ethan the next morning. His number still lived in my phone, tucked away under E. He answered on the third ring. Nora, wow, hey, this is a surprise. His voice hadn't changed. Smooth, casual, a little too light. I said, Ethan, I got a letter from a law firm about a loan you took out. There was a pause, then a sigh. Ah, that. Like it was a small thing, like it wasn't the ground giving away beneath me. I don't understand, I said. They're saying I'm responsible for this. Why is my name on it? He hesitated, and I could hear the faint sound of a lighter flicking. Look, Nora, I meant to tell you things got complicated with that investment. I thought I'd be able to cover it before it ever got to you. Cover it? My voice cracked. You forged my signature? I didn't forge anything, he said quickly. You did sign those papers, remember? It was just not exactly what I said it was. I went quiet. The room spun a little. So he hadn't lied about the signature, just everything else. He went on, softer now, almost pleading. I swear I didn't mean for you to get dragged into this. I'll figure something out. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. That was the first crack in the dam, but what came after? The phone calls, the legal threats, the humiliation of realizing my finances weren't as safe as I thought they were, that was the flood. And it all started with the lie of love.
The next few days were a blur of disbelief. I'd always thought betrayal was loud. Screaming matches, slammed doors, someone walking out. But this was quiet, invisible, like waking up to find someone had stolen the floor from under your feet. Every day, another letter arrived. Different return addresses, same tone, stern, official, merciless. The numbers blurred together, but one word kept echoing through them all. Liable. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating properly. Coffee became my meal, my comfort, my weapon against the fog settling in my mind. When I finally gathered the courage to visit the law firm listed on the first letter, it was a gray building downtown. Sterile, glass walls, the kind of place that smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and cold air. The lawyer who met me, Mr. Stein, had kind eyes behind square glasses. He glanced through my file, his brow tightening slightly as he turned each page. Then he looked up. Miss Daniels, did you sign this loan agreement knowingly? I hesitated. I told him it was a refinance, a formality. Mr. Stein sighed, leaning back in his chair. Unfortunately, your signature here binds you as a co-obligor. That means legally you share full responsibility. His words hit like a punch to the chest. I stared at the document he slid across the desk. There it was. My name, my signature. Dated and notarized. And beside it, Ethan's neat scrawl, confident and unbothered. I remember whispering, how could he do this to me? Not really to the lawyer, more to the room, to the ghost of the man that I loved. Mr. Stein tapped the page gently. It happens more often than you'd think. Love and trust are powerful and dangerous. When I left his office, the late afternoon light felt harsh against my face. The city sounded louder than usual. Cars honking, people laughing, all of it jarring against the quiet chaos spinning inside me. I sat in my car for nearly an hour before I drove home. That night, I called Ethan again. I told myself I just wanted answers, but the truth was, I wanted him to feel what I was feeling, the panic, the betrayal. He picked up after a few rings. His tone was light, as if nothing had happened. Hey, Nora, how are you holding up? Don't you dare ask me that, I snapped. You've ruined my credit. You've tied me to your debt like a chain. How could you? He cut in, his voice rising. You think I wanted this? You think I planned for everything to fall apart? I laughed bitterly. You planned enough to trick me into signing. He went quiet. Then, softly, you didn't trick me. I was desperate. The market crashed, the investors pulled out. I thought I could fix it before it touched you. I could hear his tremor in his voice. Guilt, maybe. Or just exhaustion. But guilt doesn't pay bills, and exhaustion doesn't erase signatures. I don't care what you thought, I said finally. You lied. You used me. There was silence on the line. Then he said something I'll never forget. You always said we were a team, Nora. I just took you at your word. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. That was his justification. Teamwork. As if marriage meant consent to betrayal. I ended the call without another word. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't told them much about the divorce, just that it was mutual, that we'd grown apart. They always liked Ethan. He had that charm that fooled even the wisest. My mother was in the kitchen when I arrived, kneading dough with flour dusted on her sleeves. She looked up and smiled softly. Sweetheart, you look pale. Are you eating? Her words were so ordinary that I broke. I sank into a chair and told her everything. The loan, the debt, the forged trust. She listened quietly, her hands still, eyes steady. When she finished, she exhaled slowly and said, Some people mistake love for loyalty, but real love never hides chains behind promises. I cried then, not loud but deep, shaking sobs that left me hollow. She just held me like she used to when I was little and scraped my knees. When I finally calmed down, she said, You need to fight this, Nora. Don't let his mistakes become your story. The next week, I met with a financial advisor and a second lawyer. We combed through every document, every email, every signature. The more I saw, the clearer it became Ethan had been living a double life long before the divorce. Hidden accounts, fake business names, loans layered like lies upon lies. And the worst part, my name had been used in more than one place. That was the moment the anger replaced the heartbreak. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a woman being erased by someone else's recklessness, and I wouldn't let it happen. That evening, I pulled out an old folder of photos from our marriage. There we were, smiling at the lake, cooking together, holding hands on a road trip.
I studied his face in each picture, searching for signs of deceit, some clue I'd missed. But all I saw was a man who'd been good at pretending. I tore one photo in half. Just one. Then I stopped. Because I realized something. Tearing paper doesn't change the past. The real revenge wasn't destruction. It was reclamation. So I decided then and there, I would not drown in Ethan's debt. I would not let his lies define me. If he wanted to drag me into his mess, I'd fight my way out. Clean, legal, and unbreakable. That night, I opened a new notebook and wrote across the first page, Project Freedom. It wasn't about revenge. It was about taking back what was mine. My peace, my name, my future. But I didn't know then that the next phase would be even harder. Because when you start fighting for your own freedom, the people who once benefited from your silence, they start to fight back. And Ethan, he wasn't done yet.
The reaction/action. I started the next morning with a plan, not out of bravery, but necessity. Fear had kept me still for too long, and stillness was a luxury I could no longer afford. My lawyer, Miss Patel, was a sharp woman in her 40s with a calm, deliberate way of speaking that made me feel grounded. She wore her hair in a sleek bun and carried a pen like it was a weapon. After reviewing Ethan's file, she leaned back and said, "We have two options. You can pay your share and close this chapter quietly, or we can challenge the loan, argue that consent was given under false pretenses." "False pretenses?" I repeated, my voice catching slightly. She nodded. "If we can prove you were deceived, we might invalidate your liability, but it'll be long, messy, and public." I thought about it. The endless court appearances, the scrutiny, my private life spilled into files and hearings. But I also thought about the years I'd already lost to Ethan's charm, his manipulations, his easy lies. "I'll fight," I said finally. And Miss Patel smiled, the kind of small, approving smile that said, "Good choice." For the next few weeks, I lived between two worlds, the normal life I was trying to hold together and the legal war slowly brewing underneath. By day, I still taught my students, trying to keep my voice steady as I lectured on themes of truth and deception in literature. Ironic, I know. By night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by papers, tracing dates, highlighting discrepancies, building a map of lies. There's something haunting about seeing your past in black and white, not memories, but evidence. Emails where Ethan promised temporary adjustments, bank statements showing withdrawals I never made, even my old text messages, full of affection and trust, now read like evidence of my own naivete. Each discovery hurt a little less and clarified a little more. I wasn't broken. I was becoming aware. Then came the call that changed everything. It was late, around 11 p.m. I was marking essays when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Miss Daniels, this is Officer Ramirez from the Financial Crimes Unit." My stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" He hesitated. "We're currently reviewing multiple complaints involving your ex-husband, Ethan Walsh. I understand you're listed as a co-signer on one of his loans." My pulse quickened. "Yes, I'm actually trying to fight that right now." He sighed. "You might want to come in. There's more you need to see." The next day, I sat across from Officer Ramirez in a small office that smelled faintly of old coffee and toner. He spread a folder across the table, one thicker than I'd seen before. Inside were records of Ethan's business dealings, false partnerships, inflated valuations, fake investors. And then, buried among the pages, copies of checks, all with my name on them. except I hadn't written a single one. Your ex-husband has been using your old joint account for over a year, forged signatures, moved funds through shell accounts, Ramirez explained. My head spun. But I closed that account. He nodded. You did, but he reopened a linked one using leftover authorization documents. Clever, but illegal. I sat back, trying to breathe. It wasn't just debt anymore. It was fraud. And now my name was tangled in all of it. When I got home that night, I couldn't even cry. Grief had given way to a strange calm, the kind that comes when you've run out of ways to fall apart. I made myself tea, sat by the window, and watched the rain streak down the glass. Somewhere in that sound, soft, relentless, I realized something vital. Ethan wasn't just careless. He was dangerous. And if I didn't stop him, no one would. The next morning, I met with Miss Patel again and handed her everything the officer had shown me. She flipped through it quickly, her brow furrowing deeper with every page. This changes things, she murmured. If he forged checks, we can file a criminal complaint. You could not only clear your name, but also hold him accountable. A small, trembling part of me hesitated. I didn't want vengeance. I just wanted peace. But peace built on silence isn't real. It's borrowed time. So I nodded. Do it. Word travels fast in a small town. By the end of the week, people at the college had started whispering. Some had seen Ethan's name in the local paper, real estate broker under investigation for fraud. A few students asked if I was okay. I told them I was fine. But inside, I was a mess of pride and shame. Proud for standing up, ashamed for ever being fooled. It's strange how people look at you differently when you've been betrayed. They tilt their heads as if heartbreak were contagious. One evening, while walking to my car after class, I saw him, Ethan. He was leaning against his old car in the parking lot, looking thinner, worn down. When our eyes met, he smiled faintly, not smug, but sad. I guess you heard, he said. I did, I replied, my voice even. You've made quite the headline. He exhaled, running his hair through his head. I didn't mean for it to get this far, Nora. I was trying to fix things before it fell apart. I studied him, really looked at him. For the first time, I saw the man behind the charm. Desperate, scared. But pity can be dangerous too. I didn't want to fix anything, I said quietly. You wanted to be saved, and when you couldn't save yourself, you dragged me down with you. He flinched. You're not the only one who lost something, you know. I nodded. No, but I'm the only one still paying for it. There was nothing else to say. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking against the wet pavement. Behind me, I heard him whisper, almost to himself, I really did love you. I didn't look back. That night, I filed the final set of papers with Miss Patel. Fraud report, forgery evidence, request for debt discharge. The process would take months, maybe a year. But for the first time in a long time, I slept deeply. Because even though my world was still uncertain, my spirit finally wasn't. But peace rarely comes without consequence. And soon the entire town, friends, colleagues, even family, would know the truth about Ethan's web of lies. And the truth, once exposed, doesn't just free you.
The day the story broke publicly, I was in the middle of teaching my morning class. It started like any other day. A faint chill in the air, the sound of students rustling through their notebooks, coffee cups steaming on desks. Then one of my students, a sweet girl named Tessa, raised her hand and said, "Miss Daniels, isn't this your ex-husband?" She turned her phone toward me, and there it was, a local news article with a headline that made my stomach twist. Local real estate broker accused of fraud and forgery. Ex-wife implicated in joint debt scandal. There it was again, that word, implicated. It hung in my mind like smoke. I stood there for a moment, frozen, the class watching me with quiet concern. Let's, take a short break, I finally said, my voice softer than usual. When I stepped into the hallway, the world felt like it was tilting again. The article had every detail: the loans, the investigations, even a photo of me and Ethan from our old business launch event, smiling like a couple from a brochure. Only now that smile looked foolish. By the time I got to my office, my phone was vibrating nonstop, texts from friends, messages from colleagues, even a voicemail from the dean asking for a brief conversation. The next few days blurred together. The school placed me on temporary leave for your own well-being, they said. Neighbors avoided eye contact at the grocery store, and on social media, whispers spread faster than facts. Some people assumed I'd been in on it. Others pitied me, their sympathy sharp, as pity always is. I spent most evenings sitting by the window, lights off, listening to the faint buzz of the city outside. It's strange how quickly your life can go from quiet stability to public spectacle. But through it all, I clung to the one truth that steadied me. I had done nothing wrong. A few weeks later, I was called to testify. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. Everything about it felt heavy. The silence, the fluorescent lights, the way strangers' eyes followed me as I took my seat. Ethan sat across the room, looking smaller than I remembered. He avoided my gaze at first, staring down at the table, his hands clenched tight. When my name was called, I stood, palms sweating. The questions came like slow blades, deliberate, methodical. Did you knowingly co-sign the loan in question? No. Did you ever give your ex-husband permission to use your name or your financial information after your separation? Never. Then Ethan's attorney tried to twist the narrative, implying I had benefited, that maybe I'd been complicit. I remember turning to face him and saying clearly, the only thing I gained from Ethan Walsh was debt and sleepless nights. The courtroom went still for a moment. Even the judge's pen paused mid-note. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice trembled. He admitted to the forged checks, the hidden accounts. He didn't look at me until the very end. I made mistakes, he said softly, but I never meant to hurt her. I believed that, in a way. Ethan hadn't set out to destroy me. He just loved himself more than he'd ever loved the truth. After the hearing, I stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air. The sky was pale blue, the kind that makes you feel both small and infinite. Reporters were waiting by the steps, shouting questions. I didn't answer. But among the noise, I noticed something else, a quiet kind of freedom in my chest. It wasn't over, but the power had shifted. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting to Ethan's choices. I was reclaiming my own. A week later, the court ruled that I would be cleared of financial responsibility. The evidence of fraud, the forged documents, all of it exonerated me completely. When Miss Patel called with the news, I sank to the floor of my living room and just cried. Not from sadness, but relief. The kind that shakes your bones loose. Outside, rain began to fall again. And instead of fear, I felt gratitude. Because even storms can wash things clean. The next day, the college reinstated me quietly. My dean stopped by my office, awkward but kind. He said, "We're glad to have you back, Nora." Some colleagues avoided the topic altogether, Others left small notes. Proud of you. Stay strong. Truth wins. Each one felt like a stitch in something I was slowly mending. Even my students seemed gentler. They'd look at me a little longer before class started, their eyes soft with understanding. It struck me then how scandal can strip away pretense. People either shrink from you or they see you more clearly than before. As for Ethan, he pleaded guilty. The court gave him a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation. I heard he was serving time in a minimum security facility out of state. I didn't visit. There was nothing left to say. But one afternoon, a letter arrived. The handwriting was unmistakably his, neat, slightly slanted to the right. Inside was a single page. Nora, I'm sorry. For everything. The lies, the debt, the pain. I convinced myself it was for us. But really, it was for me. You deserved honesty. You always did. I hope you find peace where I couldn't. E. I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in a drawer. Not out of forgiveness, not yet, but out of closure. Because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't always about the other person. Sometimes it's just the final act of taking your life back. That night, I cooked myself a proper meal. Pasta with fresh basil and garlic, the first real meal I'd made in months. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, every quiet sound of my home, the hum of the fridge, the steady tick of the clock. Normal things, ordinary things. It struck me how beautiful ordinary can be after chaos, after noise, after survival. But my story wasn't done yet, because healing, I discovered, doesn't arrive in one moment. It arrives slowly, in the peace you rebuild, and the nights you finally sleep without checking your phone for new disasters. And sometimes, it arrives in the smallest, most unexpected ways.